Have you ever felt trapped by pain, where every step feels like a battle, and simple tasks like tying your shoes or climbing stairs become a daily struggle? At 87 years old, I know that feeling all too well. My knees ached, my body slowed, and I thought chronic pain was just part of growing old. But what if I told you that a chance conversation in a park led me to a simple, natural remedy that changed everything? In this video, I'm sharing my journey from resignation to rediscovery, a story of hope, a homemade oil that gave me back my mobility, and a routine that keeps pain at bay. You need to watch until the end because this isn't just my story. It could be the key to unlocking a life with less pain and more freedom for you or someone you love, with a practical, affordable solution you can start using today. Before we begin, I would appreciate it if you like this video. You can help me continue to spread the old age lesson. If you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend you subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss any videos. If you like this video, please comment number 1. If you don't like it, comment number 0 to let me know, so I can make a better video for you. Now let's get started. I am 87 years old, and just 2 years ago, my life was a daily struggle defined by relentless pain and physical limitations that had crept into every corner of my existence. My knees, once sturdy and reliable, had become sources of sharp, stabbing pain that made even the simplest movements, standing up from a chair, taking a few steps, or climbing a single stair, feel like a grueling negotiation between my body and the world around me. Each step was tentative, as if the ground itself was an adversary I had to cautiously appease. My gait had slowed to a shuffle, my feet dragging with a heaviness that seemed to belong to someone else, not the active man I once was. Climbing stairs was no longer just difficult. It was a torment, each step sending jolts of pain through my joints that left me breathless and defeated. Even basic tasks like dressing became monumental challenges. Putting on pants or bending to tie my shoelaces could take agonizing minutes, my fingers fumbling as my body protested every motion. There were mornings when I would sit on the edge of my bed, staring at my legs, wondering when they had become so leaden, so uncooperative, so consumed by pain. For years, I sought relief through every avenue modern medicine offered. I tried countless pills, their names blurring into a litany of prescriptions that promised relief but delivered only fleeting respite. Some dulled the pain for a day or two, but the relief was always temporary, and the pain returned with a vengeance. I experimented with creams and ointments, rubbing them into my aching joints with the hope that quickly faded when the burning or stiffness persisted. Injections, too, were part of my arsenal, administered with clinical precision but often leaving me feeling no better than before. The side effects of these treatments were their burden: drowsiness that left me foggy, dizziness that made me wary of standing too quickly, and stomach upset that robbed me of my appetite and energy. I felt trapped in a cruel cycle, forced to choose between enduring the pain or battling the side effects that came with each attempt at relief. My doctors, compassionate and well-meaning, did their best, prescribing new medications and adjusting dosages, but I couldn't shake the feeling that they were merely managing symptoms, putting out small fires while the blaze of my condition raged on unchecked. Over time, I began to resign myself to a grim reality: that chronic pain was an inevitable part of aging, that my body was simply wearing out, and that all I could do was endure it with as much dignity as I could muster. But then, one quiet afternoon in a park near my home, everything changed. I was sitting on a bench, lost in my thoughts, when a woman I barely knew struck up a conversation. She was no doctor or nurse, just another grandmother like me, with hands weathered by time, eyes bright with a quiet vitality, and a story that caught me off guard. She spoke of a homemade oil, a remedy she had been using for years to ease her joint pain. With a calm certainty, she described how she prepared it, how she applied it, and how it had restored her mobility when she, too, had believed her active days were behind her. Her words were not those of a salesperson pitching a miracle cure, but of someone who had lived through the same struggles I faced and had found a way out. I listened, skeptical at first, I'll admit. After years of failed treatments, I had little faith in yet another remedy, especially one that sounded so simple, so unassuming. But her voice was authentic, a conviction that only comes from personal experience, from feeling the transformation in one's own body. That conversation planted a seed of hope, and it marked the beginning of a journey that would profoundly change my life. This wasn't a magical cure or a gimmick. It was a simple, time-honored remedy, rooted in the wisdom of generations, that anyone could make at home with readily available ingredients. Today, I want to share that secret with you, but first, let me ask you something personal. How old are you? And from which country are you reading this? Please share in the comments. I'd love to know where my story is reaching you. Because what I'm about to reveal might just offer you the same relief, the same renewed sense of possibility that it gave me. Before the pain took over, my life was rich with simple joys. I didn't need grand adventures to feel fulfilled. I found contentment in the small, everyday routines that defined my days. Mornings were for leisurely walks through my neighborhood, the crisp air filling my lungs as I greeted neighbors and felt the steady rhythm of my steps. Weekends were spent in my garden, tending to roses and vegetables, my hands in the soil, feeling connected to the earth. I loved walking to the local market, carrying bags of fresh produce, chatting with vendors who knew me by name. But above all, there was one ritual I cherished most: dancing with my wife. Every Friday evening, without fail, we would clear a space in our living room, put on music, sometimes a soulful bolero, other times a lively tune from our youth, and we would dance. Our movements were slow, deliberate, but they were ours. She would smile and say that as long as we kept dancing, we would stay young at heart. I believed her, and those moments were a treasure I thought I'd never lose. The first signs of trouble were subtle, easy to dismiss. I remember bending down to water a plant one day and feeling a faint twinge in my knee, a quick, sharp pull that vanished almost as soon as it appeared. I stood up carefully, chalking it up to a bad night's sleep or an awkward movement. The next morning, my legs felt stiffer than usual, as if they needed extra coaxing to move. I'm just getting older, I told myself, brushing it off. But the signs kept coming. A faint ache when climbing stairs, a nagging pressure in my joints after sitting too long, a dull burn in my lower back when I carried something heavier than a loaf of bread. These were fleeting annoyances at first, so I paid them little mind, convincing myself they were temporary, perhaps caused by the weather or a long day. That's how it often begins, isn't it? We ignore the body's whispers because we don't want to face what they might mean. We tell ourselves it's nothing, that we're just tired, that it'll pass. But ignoring those early warnings allows the problem to grow, quietly taking root until it's impossible to ignore. That was my mistake, not listening when my body first tried to speak. Over the months, what had been minor discomforts escalated into persistent pain. The stiffness that greeted me in the morning no longer faded by midday. The occasional twinge in my knees became a constant companion, flaring with every step. My hips began to ache after short walks, forcing me to cut my outings short. Gardening, once a source of joy, became impossible. Kneeling was out of the question, and even standing for too long was a trial. Worst of all, the dancing stopped. I could no longer twirl my wife without a stabbing pain that forced me to stop mid-step, my hand clutching her arm not in affection but for support. She would look at me with understanding, but I saw the sadness in her eyes, mirroring my own. The pain reshaped my life in ways I hadn't anticipated. I stopped walking for pleasure because every block felt like a marathon. I avoided family gatherings, not because I didn't want to see my loved ones, but because I couldn't bear the silent humiliation of being seen struggling to stand or sit, of needing to grip a railing to climb a single step. The worst moments came in private, when I faced the reality of my limitations head-on. Getting out of bed was no longer a simple act. I had to brace myself on my elbows, shift my weight with care, lower my feet to the floor as if they were fragile, and pause to steady myself, breathing deeply as if preparing for a battle. Standing up could make me wince, my knees stiff and uncooperative, my ankles feeling like they were carved from stone, my hips protesting every shift of weight. One memory stands out, sharp and painful. I was standing in front of my closet, trying to bend down to retrieve a pair of socks from a low drawer. 5 minutes passed, and I was still there, my hands gripping the dresser for balance, my body refusing to cooperate. My granddaughter, only 8 years old, appeared in the doorway, watching me with a mix of tenderness and quiet concern. "Grandpa, let me help," she said softly. I waved her off, pride stinging more than the pain in my joints. She insisted, her small voice firm but kind. In the end, I had no choice but to let her pick up the socks and hand them to me. That moment broke something inside me. Not my body, but my spirit. The physical pain was one thing, but the realization that I needed help from a child for something so basic made me feel truly old, truly diminished. I turned to painkillers as a lifeline, keeping a small arsenal of bottles on my nightstand. I took them in the morning to face the day, sometimes again at noon to keep going. But they came at a steep cost. They upset my stomach, dulled my appetite, and left me drowsy at odd hours, stealing the clarity I needed to feel like myself. The relief they offered was partial at best, a reprieve that never addressed the root of the problem. The pain began to seep into my mind, casting a shadow over my mood. I grew irritable, withdrawn, and less present. I started declining invitations to family dinners or outings with friends, not because I didn't love them, but because I couldn't bear the thought of them seeing me struggle, of witnessing the slow, painful decline of a man who once moved with ease. There were moments when I told myself this was simply the way of things. Some people age gracefully, their bodies holding strong, while others, like me, are not so fortunate. I tried to accept it, to make peace with the idea that pain was my new normal. But deep down, a small spark of defiance remained, a quiet belief that there might be something more, something beyond the cycle of pills and resignation. I didn't know it then, but that spark was about to lead me to a discovery that would rewrite my story. It wasn't a drug or a procedure, but a simple, natural remedy, grounded in the wisdom of those who came before us. It was real, it was accessible, and it changed everything. If you are still watching this video and finding these lessons useful, please comment number 1 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. Thank you for your valuable time. For years, I held tightly to the belief that somewhere, somehow, a solution existed to alleviate the relentless pain that shadowed my every step. I was convinced that if I persisted, tried hard enough, and explored every avenue, I would eventually uncover the remedy that would restore my freedom. So, I embarked on a journey, leaving no stone unturned, no treatment unexplored. When I say I tried everything, I mean it with every fiber of my being. My search began with physical therapy, a rigorous routine of twice-weekly sessions filled with targeted exercises, stretching regimens, heat applications, and therapeutic massages. In those early days, there were fleeting moments of relief, glimmers of hope that made me believe I was on the right path. But the relief was always short-lived. The moment I returned home, the pain crept back, like an unwelcome guest who had merely stepped out for a moment, waiting to reclaim its hold. The therapists urged me to stay consistent, promising that with months of dedication, I would see lasting improvement. Months turned into a year, and yet the pain remained an unyielding companion, unchanged despite my efforts. Disheartened but unwilling to give up, I moved on to cortisone injections, heralded by specialists as a cutting-edge solution. They assured me these injections would rejuvenate my mobility, allowing me to walk with the ease of my younger years. The procedure was neither pleasant nor affordable, each needle prick carrying the weight of my hopes. For 2, maybe 3 weeks, there was a noticeable difference, a lightness in my step, a brief respite from the grinding ache in my joints. But like clockwork, the pain returned, often sharper than before, as if mocking my fleeting optimism. My body began to crave the injections, while my wallet groaned under the financial strain. Each shot became a cycle of hope followed by crushing disappointment. Next, I turned to an array of commercial creams, their labels boasting exotic names and ingredients I could barely pronounce. Some promised instant relief, others swore by long-term healing. I applied them diligently, enduring their pungent odors and sticky residues. Some burned my skin, others left it slick and uncomfortable, but none penetrated the deep, throbbing pain rooted in my joints. Supplements followed, an endless parade of bottles filled with glucosamine, chondroitin, collagen peptides, turmeric capsules, and powdered ginger. Each came with bold claims of cartilage repair, tissue regeneration, and natural inflammation reduction. I swallowed them faithfully, clinging to the hope that they would rebuild what time had worn away. Initially, there were moments when I thought I felt a difference. Less stiffness, perhaps, or a slight easing of discomfort. But as the bottles emptied, so did my optimism. The only thing lighter was my bank account, and the only thing heavier was my frustration. I'll never forget the day I sat in a doctor's office, clutching the results of an MRI on my left knee, desperate for a new answer, a fresh perspective. The doctor, a kind man with a clinical demeanor I'd grown all too familiar with, reviewed the images and delivered his verdict. "This is normal for your age. You'll have to learn to live with it." Those words landed like a blow. Learn to live with it. How does one make peace with a thief that steals your ability to walk without wincing, to sleep without waking in agony, to live without the constant reminder of your body's betrayal? I left the office not angry at him, but at the world, at the notion that aging meant surrendering to pain, that my quality of life was a casualty of time. I was exhausted, not just physically but emotionally, drained from the endless cycle of searching, spending, trying, hoping, and falling short. I felt like a number in a system, a case too common to warrant real attention, a lost cause in a sea of patience. Then, when I had all but given up, when my hope had dwindled to its lowest ember, something unexpected happened. It wasn't a new medication, a breakthrough clinic, or a cutting-edge procedure. It was a conversation, an unassuming, serendipitous encounter that would quietly shift the trajectory of my journey. That morning, I hadn't even wanted to leave the house. My knees ached, my spirit was heavy, and the idea of moving felt like a punishment. But a small voice inside urged me to get some fresh air, to break free from the walls that seemed to close in with my pain. So, I grabbed my cane, wrapped a light scarf around my neck, and shuffled slowly to the neighborhood park. I settled on a bench, content to watch life unfold around me. Children chasing each other with boundless energy, dogs barking with unrestrained joy, and elderly folks like me, moving in slow, deliberate circles, each carrying their silent burdens. A woman I didn't know sat beside me, her white hair neatly combed, her eyes radiating a calm wisdom. She carried a small bag of breadcrumbs for the pigeons and a thermos from which she sipped something steaming and fragrant. We exchanged polite greetings, the kind strangers offer without expectation of more. But there was something about her presence, a quiet familiarity, as if she, too, had walked the path of pain I knew so well. Our conversation began with the weather, as such talks often do, then drifted to grandchildren and the small joys they bring. Inevitably, we landed on the topic of our bodies, the betrayals of age. I shared how my knees limited me to 10 minutes of walking before I needed to rest, how the pain dictated my days and haunted my nights. She listened, not with pity, but with a knowing nod, as if my words echoed in the past. "I was like you," she said softly, her voice steady and unhurried. "My back pain was so severe I couldn't stand without tears. I tried everything, painkillers, injections, even acupuncture. Nothing gave me lasting relief until my aunt, who knew the old ways, shared a family recipe for a natural oil. It changed everything for me." I raised an eyebrow, skepticism creeping in. I'd heard countless stories of miracle cures, herbal concoctions, homemade salves, teas steeped in ancient secrets. None had delivered. But her sincerity held me. I asked what was in this oil, expecting a vague or mystical answer. "Turmeric, ginger, and a touch of copaiba oil," she replied matter-of-factly, "mixed with extra virgin olive oil, all prepared at home. I apply it twice a day, massaging it into the inflamed areas." I didn't know whether to chuckle or thank her. A homemade oil? After years of medical interventions, specialists, and pharmaceuticals, the answer was a kitchen remedy? Yet her tone wasn't that of a salesperson or a dreamer. She wasn't peddling a product or preaching a cure. She was simply sharing what had worked for her, and that authenticity silenced my doubts. She spoke of the oil as a practical tool, not a panacea, and her calm conviction planted a seed of curiosity. I left the park with her words echoing in my mind, a mix of skepticism and intrigue. What did I have to lose? I'd already spent thousands on treatments that failed me. That evening, I gathered the ingredients. Turmeric was already in my pantry, a dusty jar from some long-forgotten recipe. Fresh ginger came from the local market, its sharp scent waking my senses. Copaiba oil was trickier to find, but a small herbal shop, its shelves lined with jars and smelling of earth and tradition, had it in stock. Following her instructions, I mixed the ingredients with extra virgin olive oil, heating them gently to release their properties. The process was simple, almost meditative, and I stored the golden liquid in a dark glass bottle, as she'd advised, letting it rest for a few hours. The next morning, I applied a small amount to my knees, massaging it in with cautious hope. I didn't expect a miracle, and none came that day. But there was a subtle shift, a gentle warmth, a faint easing of tension. It wasn't the absence of pain, but a softening, a whisper of possibility. Over the days that followed, I made it a ritual. Morning and night, I applied the oil, massaging it into my joints with care. The warmth it brought was comforting, not the burning sting of commercial creams, but a soothing embrace. The scent was earthy, grounding, a reminder of nature's quiet power. As I delved deeper, I learned this oil wasn't a novel discovery. Its roots stretched back centuries, used in traditional practices across cultures to soothe joint pain, reduce inflammation, and ease stiffness. Turmeric, with its active compound curcumin, is a potent anti-inflammatory, backed by studies showing its ability to calm swollen tissues. Ginger and garlic, too, have long been revered for their healing properties, while rosemary and copaiba oil enhance circulation and reduce pain. Yet, this knowledge, so accessible and time-tested, rarely finds its way into modern medical offices or pharmacy shelves, overshadowed by synthetic solutions and profit-driven systems. Here's how to make it yourself, step by step, for anyone seeking a natural approach to joint pain. Ingredients: half a cup extra virgin olive oil, a carrier oil to deliver the active ingredients. 2 tablespoons turmeric powder or freshly grated turmeric root, anti-inflammatory powerhouse. 1 tablespoon freshly grated ginger, boosts circulation and reduces inflammation. 2 garlic cloves, crushed, contains allicin, which supports tissue repair. 1 sprig fresh rosemary or 1 teaspoon dried rosemary, improves blood flow and soothes pain. Optional. 1 teaspoon copaiba oil, a natural anti-inflammatory, if available. Preparation. In a small saucepan, pour the olive oil and warm it over low heat. The oil should never boil, just warm enough to feel gentle to the touch. Add the turmeric, ginger, garlic, and rosemary. Stir gently to combine, keeping the heat low to avoid burning the ingredients. Let the mixture simmer for 10 to 15 minutes, stirring occasionally, allowing the ingredients to infuse the oil with their properties. Remove from heat and let it cool completely, about 30 to 45 minutes. Strain the oil through a fine mesh strainer or cheesecloth to remove all solids, leaving a smooth, golden liquid. Pour the filtered oil into a dark glass bottle with an airtight lid to preserve its potency. Application. Apply a small amount, about a teaspoon, to the affected joint. Massage gently in circular motions for 5 to 10 minutes, allowing the oil to penetrate the skin. Use twice daily, once in the morning to ease morning stiffness and once at night to promote restful sleep. Consistency is key. Natural remedies often require time to show cumulative effects. Storage. Store in a cool, dark place, away from direct sunlight or heat sources. A dark glass bottle helps protect the oil's properties. Refrigeration isn't necessary, but can extend shelf life. Use within 2 to 3 months for maximum potency. Precautions. This oil is for external use only. Do not ingest. Avoid applying to open wounds, cuts, or irritated skin. Perform a patch test on a small area of skin, like your forearm, before first use to check for sensitivity or allergic reactions. Consult a doctor if you're on medications or have underlying health conditions, as some ingredients may interact with treatments. If you are still watching this video and finding these lessons useful, please comment number 2 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. Thank you for your valuable time. This oil isn't a magic bullet, but it's a powerful ally when used consistently alongside healthy habits, gentle movement, a balanced diet, and proper hydration. For me, it's become more than a remedy. It's a ritual of self-care, a reminder that I can still take control of my well-being. The ingredients are affordable, natural, and accessible, a stark contrast to the costly treatments that left me disillusioned. In those first weeks of using the oil, I noticed subtle changes. The pain didn't vanish overnight, but the sharp edges dulled. My knees felt less like rusted hinges, my mornings less daunting. The warmth of the oil, the act of massaging it into my skin, became a moment of connection with my body, a small act of defiance against resignation. That woman in the park, with her thermos and her breadcrumbs, gave me more than a recipe. She gave me hope, a rare and precious gift when you've spent years battling chronic pain. She reminded me that sometimes, the answers we seek aren't in sterile clinics or expensive bottles, but in the wisdom of those who've walked the same path and found a way to keep going. 4 years, sleep was a fleeting guest in my life, never staying long enough to offer true rest. I'd lie awake, my body a map of aches and pains, each joint and muscle reminding me of its presence. I couldn't remember the last time I'd slept more than 4 hours without waking, jolted by a sharp stab in my knees or a dull throb in my lower back. Pain was my constant companion, dictating my days and stealing my nights. But then, something changed. It began quietly, almost imperceptibly. On the first night I tried the turmeric and ginger oil Mrs. Clara had told me about. That night, I slept deeply, uninterrupted, for the first time in what felt like decades. I woke the next morning, expecting the usual stiffness, but found my body less resistant, my mind less clouded. I brushed it off as a fluke, a rare good night, nothing more. The second night was the same. So was the third. By the fourth, I began to wonder if this was more than a coincidence. Could it be the oil? I hadn't dared to hope for such a change. For so long, my mornings had been a ritual of endurance, waking to a body that felt like it belonged to someone else, stiff and unyielding. I'd sit on the edge of my bed, waiting for my joints to loosen, as if coaxing an old machine back to life. Each movement was deliberate, calculated, a negotiation with pain. But that week, something was different. I woke with less tension in my back, my shoulders less heavy. On the fifth morning, I noticed something startling. I stood up without hesitation. No lingering at the bed's edge, no mental checklist of which joints might protest. I walked to the kitchen, my steps firmer, more certain, and poured my coffee without a second thought. That's when a quiet, dangerous thought slipped into my mind. What if this is working? I didn't voice it aloud. Not to my children, who worried about me constantly, nor to my friends, who had grown accustomed to my complaints about aching knees and sleepless nights. This was my secret, fragile and precious, like a seedling I feared might wither if exposed too soon. I held it close, afraid that speaking it might break the spell. But inside, something was shifting. For the first time in years, I wasn't bracing for the pain's return. Instead, I found myself searching for it, testing my body, waiting for the familiar ache, and it wasn't there. It was as if my body was whispering back to me, "I'm still here. I'm not done yet." By the second week, the changes were undeniable. The morning stiffness that had once gripped my joints like a vice began to loosen its hold. My fingers, which had ached with every attempt to grip a mug or button a shirt, moved with less resistance. I climbed the stairs to my apartment without pausing every 2 steps to catch my breath or steady myself against the railing. One afternoon, I found myself walking through the park near my home, lost in the rhythm of my steps. It wasn't until I glanced at my watch that I realized I'd been walking for over 10 minutes without stopping, a small victory that felt monumental. I stood still, not from exhaustion, but from disbelief. I could feel the warmth of the sun on my face, hear the chatter of birds in the trees, and for a moment, I was no longer the woman defined by her pain. That night, as I settled into bed, a wave of emotions washed over me. Excitement, yes, but also fear. Excitement because my body was responding, because I was rediscovering a version of myself I thought I'd lost. Fear because I didn't trust it yet. What if this were temporary? A fleeting reprieve before the pain returned, stronger and more relentless? I lay there, staring at the ceiling, reminding myself to stay cautious, to temper my hope. But each day brought new evidence that this was real. My body was waking up, and with it, a part of my spirit I hadn't realized had gone dormant. The most profound change wasn't just the easing of physical pain, it was the hope that began to take root. For years, pain had been a thief, stealing not just my mobility but my sense of possibility. It had made me smaller, quieter, as if I were shrinking into the background of my own life. I'd stopped making plans, stopped dreaming of long walks or spontaneous outings, because I knew my body would betray me. But now, with each small improvement, I felt that spark reignite. It wasn't just about moving without pain. It was about believing I could live again, fully, with joy and purpose. And all of this, remarkably, traced back to something as simple as an oil no doctor had ever mentioned. A remedy shared in a passing conversation with a woman named Mrs. Clara. Mrs. Clara's words echoed in my mind. "If you're consistent, this oil brings back things you thought you'd never feel again." She had spoken with such quiet conviction, her eyes bright with the wisdom of someone who had walked the same path. I met her by chance on a bench in a small plaza during a trip with my daughter. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the cobblestones, and we struck up a conversation about the weather, then age, then the aches that come with it. She told me about copaiba oil, mixed with turmeric and ginger, and how it had eased her arthritis. I was skeptical, Years of prescriptions and doctor's visits had left me wary of promises, but her sincerity stayed with me. That night, I ordered a small bottle online, not expecting much. Now, months later, I wish I could find her again to say, "You were right. Thank you for giving me my life back." Discovering the oil was only the beginning. The real transformation came from what followed, a shift in how I cared for my body. I realized that relieving pain wasn't enough. I had to prevent it from returning. That meant building a routine, a series of small, intentional acts that, together, made all the difference. Today, I want to share that routine with you. Not as a prescription, but as a story of what worked for me, in case it might help you too. It's not complicated or expensive, but it requires commitment. Because once you taste what it's like to move freely again, to wake without dread, you'll do anything to hold on to it. My day begins early, between 6 o'clock and 7 a.m., when the world is still quiet. I don't leap out of bed. That's a recipe for stiffness. Instead, I take a few moments to wake my body gently, stretching my arms and legs while still under the covers. It's a habit I stumbled into, born of necessity. Abrupt movements set off a cascade of aches, but slow, mindful stretches coax my joints into cooperation. I focus on my breathing, letting the rhythm guide each movement, as if reminding my body it's safe to move. Next comes the turmeric and ginger oil, my faithful ally. I pour a few drops into my palm and massage it into the areas that trouble me most. My knees, which once screamed with every step. My ankles, which swelled after too much time on my feet. And occasionally my shoulders, stiff from years of tension. The massage isn't vigorous. Just slow, circular motions for about 5 minutes per joint. I can feel the warmth of the oil sinking in, soothing inflammation, and waking up my circulation. The scent, earthy and slightly spicy, has become a comforting signal that I'm caring for myself. If you are still watching this video and finding these lessons useful, please comment number 3 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. Thank you for your valuable time. Breakfast follows, and it's no longer the hurried toast and coffee of my younger years. I choose foods that support my body's healing. A bowl of oatmeal sprinkled with chia seeds, walnuts, and a pinch of turmeric powder for its anti-inflammatory properties. I've cut out white bread and processed meats, which I learned were silently fueling my inflammation. If I'm hungrier, I add slices of papaya or pineapple, fruits I've read aid digestion and reduce swelling. It's a small ritual, but it feels like an act of respect for my body. Mid-morning, I move. If the weather permits, I walk in the small park near my home, where the paths are flat and forgiving. I don't push myself too hard. 10 or 15 minutes is enough to feel the benefits without overtaxing my joints. On days when I'm not up for it, I've found an alternative: walking in warm water. I fill a wide tub with water just warm enough to relax my muscles and step in place for a few minutes. The buoyancy eases the impact on my joints, and the warmth soothes them. I discovered this trick in an online forum for arthritis sufferers, and it's been a game changer. After my walk, I do a brief stretching routine. Nothing strenuous, just gentle movements to keep my arms, neck, hips, and legs limber. I might rotate my shoulders, tilt my head side to side, or stretch my calves against a wall. It's not about fitness, it's about gratitude, a way of saying to my body, thank you for still being here. Throughout the day, I stay mindful of my posture and movement. I don't sit for too long. Every hour, I stand, stretch, or walk a few steps. If I've been on my feet, I rest with my legs elevated to ease any swelling. If a twinge of pain creeps in, I don't ignore it. I apply the oil again, rest, or simply pause to listen to what my body is telling me. I've learned that pain is a signal, not a sentence, and addressing it early keeps it from spiraling. In the afternoon, I brew an infusion of turmeric and ginger, sometimes with a touch of honey for sweetness. Sipping it slowly, I feel it complements the oil's work, calming my body from the inside out. But it's not just about physical habits. I've come to understand that the mind and body are intertwined, and keeping my spirit active is as vital as any oil or stretch. I read novels, jot down thoughts in a journal, call a friend to laugh about old times, or tackle a crossword puzzle. These small acts keep my mind sharp and my heart light, reminding me that I'm more than my pain. I don't claim to be cured. At 87, I know my body will always carry the weight of its years. But I feel stronger, freer, and, most importantly, unafraid. I wake each morning not dreading the day, but curious about what it might hold. This didn't come from a miracle drug or a single moment of revelation. It came from a choice, made day after day, to care for myself before the pain could take hold again. It's a quiet kind of power, built from small, loving habits. Pain has a way of teaching you, though its lessons are hard-won. It doesn't shout, it whispers, settling into your bones until you forget what life was like without it. It made me cautious, inward, as if I were watching life from the sidelines. I planned my days around what my body could handle, declining invitations to dinners or walks because I knew the cost would be too high. The deepest wound wasn't the physical pain, it was the sense of uselessness. I felt like a burden, always needing help, always accompanied by a chorus of, "Be careful," or "Let me do it." I lost confidence, and with it, a piece of who I was. When the oil began to work, I didn't trust it. I'd had good days before, fleeting moments of relief that vanished as quickly as they came. But then the days stacked up, each one a little better than the last. I climbed stairs without gripping the railing. I tied my shoes without wincing. I looked in the mirror and saw not just an old woman, but someone capable, someone who could still surprise herself. I started doing things I hadn't in years, watering my plants, arranging books on my shelf, walking to the corner store. These were small acts, but to me, they were triumphs. They were proof that I wasn't finished, that my body still had fight left in it. That spark of self-esteem, that sense of being me again, was the greatest gift. I felt worthy, not just of care but of joy. I could say, "Yes, I can do it," and mean it. And for that, I owe a debt to Mrs. Clara, the woman whose chance conversation on a park bench changed everything. I think of her often, her kind eyes and steady voice, sharing her story without pretense. I don't know where she is now, but if she ever reads this, I hope she knows the ripple effect of her words. She didn't just give me a remedy, she gave me hope. To you, reading this, I want to speak directly. If you've carried pain for years, if you feel trapped in a body that no longer feels like yours, please hear this. It's not too late. Your body remembers how to heal, how to hope. It might take a small push, an oil, a walk, a conversation, but change is possible. At 87, I found my way back to joy, to movement, to myself. If I can, so can you. Don't give up yet. The thing that changes your life might be closer than you think. Thank you for listening, truly. Sharing this story isn't about seeking pity or praise. It's about reaching out to someone who might need to hear it, just as I needed Mrs. Clara's words all those months ago. If I'd heard a story like this 10 years ago, maybe I would have suffered less, lived more. So I tell it now, with all my heart, hoping it finds you where you are and lights a small spark of possibility. Thank you for joining me on this journey, from the pain that held me back to the hope and freedom I found through a simple, natural remedy. I've shared my story, the turmeric oil recipe, and the small daily habits that gave me my life back at 87 years old. Now, I want to hear from you. What have you learned from this video? What's one thing you've taken away that you'll bring into your own life to practice? Please share it in the comments below. I'm excited to read your stories and connect with you. If you found this video helpful, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who needs it, because walking without pain is a right we all deserve. If you like this video, please leave your comment below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more stories and solutions to live better every day. Thank you for being here.